Hey guys, welcome to another edition of viewer requested topics in Cuphead. I did this kind of videos all the way back when the game first came out, back when I didn't have vocal cords yet. So basically this video is a collection of ideas and requests you guys had in the comments, and I'll try to please as many people as I can with the limited time I have for this one. First topic we're gonna look at is, as suggested by Alex2000, rank the weapons and charms in Cuphead. So the top 3 weapons for me, that's crystal clear, but I'm less confident about the order in which I'd put them. And those are Roundabout, Crackshot and Charge. I would say personally for me Charge is probably third, because I just find it more finicky to use in some situations. It's a skill issue, but in the right hands, it can be the best weapon simply because the damage outshines basically every other weapon. Roundabout isn't far behind in terms of DPS, and I find it a lot easier to use. It basically just shoots straight, except the range is far better if you're facing away from the target. It might take a little bit of getting used to, but it's pretty straightforward. I don't particularly love either of the X moves on these 2 shots though, which is why Crackshot is my personal favorite. It's definitely behind Roundabout and Charge in terms of damage, but I just like how it plays, and I kinda like that it isn't too powerful. When I use Roundabout against, say, Mortimer Freeze Phase 2, I feel it's over way too quickly, and that's one of my favorite phases in the whole game, so why would I want that? With Crackshot it feels more balanced and I don't have to worry about aiming, I just focus on avoiding shit. I don't really enjoy trying to aim at bosses while locked in place anyway, like fuck Mortimer Freeze Phase 1 with any other shot than Crackshot. And the X move is actually very nice. Not only do you create a little turret, and not only will it do damage should it come into contact with enemies, and not only can you parry it to launch it at the nearest enemy, but also the fact that you can parry it makes it super useful in and of itself. It even works with Heart Ring, so if you're out of health and there's nothing to parry, you can create your own parries and heal through that. As for the worst shots, I mean, I have an entire challenge dedicated to that, so it probably comes as no surprise that I despise Lobber. Its damage is good, but that doesn't matter if it never hits anything. Range is shit, angle it fires from is even shitter, and it's only useful in like a couple phases in the entire game. It's basically just made for Grim and Rumor Honey Bottoms. That's it. There's also Chaser, which they should just delete. Just delete it from the game, delete it from the game files. Forget it ever existed, it doesn't matter anymore. Before it had the distinct advantage of tracking enemies, so you never had to worry about aiming. The damage was garbage, but still it had that unique aspect. Now it doesn't. Crackshot is better in every single way, and you'd have to be deliberately making things harder for yourself if you ever picked Chaser over it. There's also Twist Up, which upon first using I was sure was the worst shot in the whole game. But once you get used to the weird angle, you can use it somewhat effectively, sometimes. It's still below average, but it gets the job done sometimes. As for Converge, Pea-Shooter, Spread, they're all very mid. I don't really see any fights where they would be the best option. Maybe Spread in like a couple fights would be pretty good. So, in which order would I put all of these in? In terms of like favorites to use, I would say number 1, Crackshot, number 2, Roundabout, 3, Charge, 4, Spread, 5, Converge, 6, Pea-Shooter, 7, Twist Up, 8, Lobber, and 9, Chaser. I mean, I do hate Lobber more for personal reasons, but at least it is useful in a couple fights. Chaser is never a good option. Just, again, delete it. I don't really have much to say about the charms because I really only use 2. Astral Cookie and Heart Ring. Both are S tier, everything else is meaningless. Don't care. There's never a situation or a boss where I would consider swapping out. It wasn't quite as cut and dry before the DLC though. Back then I mostly used 1 extra heart and Smoke Bomb. But like, why would I ever use Smoke Bomb now? I can just use Chalice and she already has a Smoke Bomb ability, plus a free extra heart and a double jump. Alright, then next, since we already talked about how much I hate Lobber because of the worst shot challenge, let's talk a little bit about that challenge, shall we? A lot of people wanted to let me know that someone called Just Do All Day did what I couldn't do, beat Saltbaker on Expert with Lobber, and without taking any damage, as a bonus. I don't know who that is, but good on him. I'm guessing the amount of time he spent on it is somewhere in his name. I actually looked up who he is, and apparently he was somehow inspired by me to make his own channel, and he's been doing fairly well with it. Imagine being inspired by me. That is the saddest origin story I've ever heard. But you know what? It's also really sweet to hear. I've tried to redo the fight with Lobber since I made that video, but it's not going anywhere. I think I've hit the limit of what I'm able to do in this game, and lobbing Saltbaker to death is just not going to happen. So, rest in peace Magic Tab. But what I want to see is someone do Devil and Angel, lobber only, no damage. I can't even get halfway through it with all 3 lives, so that would be impressive to see. Some have also requested me to do more different Cuphead challenges, but the best idea anyone could come up with so far has been Best Shot Challenge. Yeah, sorry, that just seems too difficult. So if you guys have any better ideas, let me know, cause I definitely don't. Next, Demented Villain, along with a handful of others, have asked me to rank the individual faces. So you know what, I'll give you top 10 worst and top 10 best faces. So number 10 worst face is gonna be Briny Beard's finale. The whole fight is an escalating chaos with more fish and more cannonballs joining throughout the fight. The tension is just building and building, and then for its climax, you get a wet fart of a fight. It's just a single annoying attack that spins around, interrupted by the occasional laser that is indeed parryable to this day. Number 9 is Goopy Legrand, and which face in particular you might be wondering? I don't know, pick any. They're all the same. He goes from left to right, or right to left, and every once in a while does a little attack that's easy to avoid. 8 is Grim Phase 2, but I honestly considered Phase 3 as well. But since I want to keep this to 1 phase per boss, it's not getting its own spot individually here. But know that I'm not a fan of it either. But at least that one doesn't make me fall asleep, because you really have to pay attention. For Phase 2, it's an absolute snooze fest. You often don't even have to dodge anything. 7 is Mortimer Phase 1. Now like I said, with Crackshot it's not bad. But that's just one shot. With 90% of the game's tools, this fight is extremely obnoxious. Again, this is on Expert, so on regular I'm sure it's over in 5 seconds, so it doesn't matter, but I always play on Expert. I hate the Icicle minions in particular. Out of all the minions any boss can summon, these probably rank at the top for me, for worst. 6 goes out to Rumor Phase 1, but also dishonorable mention to Phase 3. It's just... ugh! But this first one is just really boring. I've never had a single millisecond of enjoyment doing it. The only happiness I feel is when it's over. 5, Bebby the Clown on his goddamn horse donkey. It is either a laughing stock with Bebby letting you go under him and just camp there, or he'll combo an attack in a frustrating manner with the incoming train. It's very RNG dependent and it's just never really fun. Number 4 is Wally Warbles, on Expert specifically. Normally, it's fine, but if you've ever tried this on Expert mode, you know what I'm talking about. Fuck the eggshells. Fuck the, yeah, that's actually about it. It's just the eggshells. I hate them. I'd say the final phase is about as annoying, honestly. Just very awkward positioning-wise. The third worst phase is the very final one in the base game, and it's when the devil breaks down like a little bitch. But in reality, I'm the one crying. It might be very short, but I just fuck it up all the time because I'm awful at parrying objects falling down quickly, which in this case are the tears. You just have to awkwardly, preemptively try to parry them before you even see them. Second worst phase is Calamaria Phase 3, and my god, is this a combination of a lot of bad ideas. Petrifying mechanic, bad. Narrow ass tunnel, bad. Unavoidable attacks, bad. I get what the point is. You're supposed to position yourself carefully, so when you get petrified, you're far away enough from all the obstacles that you might collide with. But knowing that somehow doesn't make it any less annoying to do. But the worst phase has to be Saltbaker Phase 3. I doubt I really need to explain myself here. It's by far the shortest phase in the game, and yet during those precious few seconds it manages to suck ass. I get hit here way too often, and I know it's my own fault, but I don't care. Fuck this phase. As for the best phases, which I'm much happier to reminisce, number 10's gonna be Calamaria's first one. It all goes downhill from here, but for the time it lasts, I always enjoy the beginning of this fight. Not only are her animations cute, but the attacks are very varied and unique, like the seahorse spewing water at you, which doesn't do damage, but it will kinda push you upwards, and it can cause you mess up dodging her overlapping attacks. I think that's pretty cool, unlike petrifying shit. Number 9 is another boss that starts out very strong before spiraling off into shit, and that's Grim Matchstick. So the first phase is pretty flawless. It makes good use of the platforming with attacks that complement it. The animations are once again cute, and I like the tail joining the fight after you've done some damage to the boss. It's escalating difficulty, so that's good, and the parries are very satisfying to get. Number 8 is Glumstone the Giant, Phase 1 yet again. This one is really unique with the pillars that go up and down, and in particular I like the gnome floor. On Expert you kinda have to walk along it for brief moments, and you have to actually plan ahead a little, because if you stand still for even a second, you're getting gnomed. 7 is Hildeberg's final form, the Half Moon, and this was a very memorable moment for me when I first played the game, and gameplay-wise it holds up so well that they kinda redid it in the DLC. I'm of course talking about how the UFOs either shoot early or late, and you can tell which one's gonna do which based on their color, and that's the same idea for Howling Ace's final phase. Number 6 is Werner Werman, second phase. This one is very unique and extremely chaotic, and it's such a stark contrast to how the fight begins. Suddenly there's platforms and bottle caps, a flamethrower, and you have to make hasty decisions, but also simultaneously plan ahead. And throughout it all, I love how Werner looks like he's just barely managing to make the machine work. Number 5 is actually a tie between Moonshine Mob's first two phases. I feel both do what they set out to do perfectly. First one is a perfect chaotic fight with focus on minions and cleaning out the bombs, while phase 2 is more focused, there's less going on, but it's still more intense. I even like the third phase quite a bit, so honestly if I were to redo my ranking of all the bosses, maybe Moonshine Mob would get a top 3 or 4 spot somewhere in there. Number 4 is Howling Ace's Phase 4. By far one of the most bizarre twists in any of the bosses. It's also one of the coolest and most fun fights in the game. I like that it goes back and forth between rapid firing lasers and flipping the screen sideways for the bowls, which again takes inspiration from Hildeberg. And it does it to a great effect. Number 3 is Saltbaker, and if I had to pick the best phase, it would be the second one. But honestly, the first one has grown on me over time. I didn't think I'd get to that point after the misery of lobbering it, but here we are. Still, I would say the second part is a bit more fun, especially if you're using Crackshot and Chalice. It's just so satisfying to use the X move, set up a turret, then parry it and launch it at an enemy while simultaneously using that parry to dodge over projectiles. And I actually like how the two fires work here. They'll take turns jumping, so if you decide to jump over one of them yourself, you gotta keep in mind which one jumped last and when, so you don't get smoked while you're in the air. I think it's one of the most consistent and balanced fights in the game. Number 2 is as chaotic as a fight can get without being bullshit, and that's of course the Devil Phase 3. Despite there being a lot going on, it's still perfectly fair and well telegraphed. You already know how the flaming poker chip works from the previous phase, and I like the oh shit feeling you get when you see there's only 3 platforms left for you. Not to mention, it's a really fun fight. Number 1 is, for me, Mortimer Freeze's second phase. I love the kind of fight where at first you think it's just bullshit and impossible, and on Expert it first kinda felt that way because all of a sudden the big snowman is rolling across the screen while there's still ice cubes and popsicles flying around, and I was confused how on earth I could possibly avoid all 3 at once. But it's all about positioning. It's best to try to stay as far from the boss as possible when he's in fridge mode so that the big ice cubes break in a corner that he would charge into rather than have them break in the middle. Overall, it feels like the most dynamic and smooth fight out of all the ones they've done. So for the last topic of the day, I figured I'd do what's, for some fucking reason, the most requested video since the launch of the DLC. Top 10 Noses, DLC edition. So okay, let's do it. Number 10 is gonna go to the little rats or mice in the final chess challenge against the queen herself. And I did this for 2 reasons. 1, the cats are cute, rats are cute, and I never even noticed they were there until I went nose hunting. 2, it's a perfect chance to pay my respects to the recently deceased Queen Elizabeth. Now what does she have to do with a mini-boss in Cuphead? That's a good question, me. I guess it really doesn't. But anyway, dicks out for the queen. Number 9 is in another chess challenge, the first one versus the pawns. And if there's one thing I like, it's Cuphead pawn. Anyway, you might be wondering where the nose in question is, and to answer that we're gonna have to zoom right there. It's the moose, and I picked it because I just came back from visiting Canada, and moose is like one of the more iconic creatures of Canada. I didn't see any while I was there though. The nose itself is okay, it looks like a moose snout. It's not very over-the-top cartoonish, but for the sake of the connection, I had to pick it for number 9. Number 8's a doozy, I'll tell you what. It's Glumstone the Giant's red bulbous snoot, and it had to be on the list. I mean, it was one of the first ones to pop into my head when I was thinking about which noses I should include. The reason it's right here above the moose snout is because this boss is like Canada, the boss. It might not have moosies, but it has Canadian geese, bear bodies, and big-ass mountains. Plus, the nose itself is just very high quality. You can tell this by the shine effect on it. That's actually how you separate a good quality nose from a fake one. Also, he can turn it into a whistle on command, which earns extra points. Number 7 was going to be Esther Winchester's nose in Phase 3 specifically, because it's a stealth nose. It's only visible when she attacks, which I guess that's neat. But then I found out Esther was animated by a Twitter furry. So you know what? Never mind. Instead, I'm giving the number 7 spot to the fan favorite Saluki pilot from the Howling Aces boss. And I've noticed a lot of people find this boss unironically hot. Like, they want to have sex with this dog. And I think it's gotta be because of the nose. There's just something about the way it's curved upwards that makes her look very snobby, self-important, or something like that. And I guess some people like that. It reminds me of this one time when I was freaking out about my flight being cancelled and having to wait like 10 hours in an airport. And while I was talking about it in my server, this one kid just kept going on about how much he wants to fuck the Saluki pilot. It got to the point that we had to ban him. He just wouldn't shut up about it. It was the worst day of my life, and not because of being stuck on the airport. I really should have just given the spot to Esther. Number 6 is going to be awarded to the stomach hag that resides inside Glumstone. So not only is Glumstone's own nose top tier, but even an intestine inside him has won. That's a 2-for-1 deal, and I gotta love it. That's why I was so excited announcing number 6. However, it is kinda disgusting. It's red, but not in a shiny good way like Glumstone's nose. It looks slimy and it's not solid, it's like a flaccid, floppy, worm-shaped neb. I was genuinely kinda shocked when I first saw this thing, and I think some of that credit has to go to the nose. Just look at that thing. Ugh. Number 5 is Saltbaker himself, but before we talk about him, I have some nose facts for you. Firstly, did you know your nose humidifies the air you breathe? That's because your lungs don't like dry air. Also, did you know that your nose and sinus produce almost an entire liter of mucus per day, which you won't notice because you swallow most of it? That's disgusting. And the last fact is, sneezing can create 40,000 droplets that travel up to 20 miles per hour and has a spray radius of 5 feet, according to Google anyway. So keep that in mind next time you're sneezing in public. Speaking of which, this really makes me question the anatomy of the salt shakers in the second phase. I don't think you can sneeze without having a nose, and yet here we have these guys who are seemingly sneezing out of either their head or mouth, or maybe like Esther they have a stealth nose but even stealthier. So you know what, fuck Saltbaker, I'm giving number 5 to the Salt Shakers. It's about time for number 4, which I've decided to give to the boatman that brings you to the DLC island. Not only that, but he can take you to pretty much everywhere except Inkwell Hell, so he's a really handy chap. As for the nose, it's a clock, which is really cool. Now you're right, it's a stopped clock, so is it really that great? It's not like you can tell time by looking at him. Well, you know what, even a stopped clock is right twice a day. Number 3 is Mortimer Freeze's Icicle Beak, and I like how in Phase 3 it gets bigger. I don't really know what else to say. Should I dig up some more nose facts as filler? Or how about we just keep going? Number 2 is a twist! It's Mugman's nose, and that's because one of the most controversial things I ever did in my entire YouTube career was leaving Mugman's nose out of the top 10 noses, the original video. There was a public outcry about it, and I felt ashamed of having forgotten about it. So let's give a round of applause to the finally acknowledged giant blueberry nose of Mugman. It is very glorious. Number 1 is of course the Anteater's nose from Moonshine Mob, because not only is it a nose, but it's also a mouth. But it's actually a double mouth, he already has one. How does that work? Who gives a fuck? It's a children's game and it's 2 in the morning and I wanna go to sleep, okay? Goodbye.